Welcome to Aston Business. I'm Steve Dyson, the journalist presenting this regular podcast for Aston Business School. This podcast is focusing on how small businesses, known as SMEs, are coping with the huge economic disruption caused by the coronavirus pandemic. This special series is called Aston Business, SMEs Dealing with COVID-19. We've been talking to businesses who are taking part or who've previously taken part in Aston Centre for Growth's programmes, giving them a voice to discuss their challenges, share their experiences and explain how they are coping with the crisis. We've also been talking to some of Aston Business School's top academics and other experts, getting their valuable insight, analysis and advice for SMEs. In today's episode, we're going to find out how hard one business has been hit by the lockdown. Please bear with us as all recordings are carried out remotely online to make sure we abide by the government's current stay-at-home advice. Joining me online now is Simon Greenfield. Now, Simon's the Managing Director of Colour Cubed Creative Communications. Simon, tell us a bit more about Colour Cubed. When was the company formed? What does it do and what are its unique features?
Okay, Colour Cubed Creative Communications was founded in 1988, and for 32 years we've been supplying design, print, websites and marketing to a range of clients across the UK and Europe. Our primary market is hotels and event venues. So our biggest national client is Jewellery's Inn, the chain. And local clients include Millennium Point, Library of Birmingham, and Birmingham Repertory Theatre. Most agencies specialise in either digital or physical marketing, but we are possibly the only complete agency in the area that does both very well indeed.
Okay, so I get the picture, and just to draw that out a bit more for our listeners, what's the business structure in terms of who owns the business, what's your average turnover, what staff numbers do you have?
We're based in our own building in Halesowen. There's a team of 11, of which 2 are directors, and me and my co-director Steve own the business. Last year, at our peak, we were turning over nearly £1 million a year, but that started dropping off after the summer with all the Brexit uncertainty and the election coming up.
Okay, but nevertheless, quite a substantial business, and you've been going for some decades. So that's a good picture for our listeners to understand where you're coming from and what you do. Now, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected business for Colour Cubed? I know you were already saying that there was a bit of a downturn because of Brexit. Has that now increased because of COVID-19?
When the Prime Minister told people not to go to pubs and restaurants, which I think was on the Friday before the lockdown, he basically turned off the tap of orders into my business. I mean, it was like somebody had flicked a switch and just stopped the sales process dead in its tracks. I mean, he should not have announced measures that will directly damage a sector of British industry. And in this case, it was the hospitality sector, which is in fact my business relies on, without having a package of support ready and available for applications. I don't know what they were thinking.
And in terms of how you've coped with that, what are you doing in terms of, how are you seeing your cash flows change? Have you had to make some redundancies or layoffs, or are you taking up any of the government assistance?
I thought I was insured for this exact situation. Every year I pay for business interruption insurance, and I thought that for pandemics and viruses, I was insured for £50,000. However, my insurance company won't pay up because the name of the virus, COVID-19, is not listed on the insurance document. Well, I took out the insurance in June and the virus didn't get the name until February. So it was impossible to be insured. And I'm thinking that means that not just me, but I imagine nearly every business in the UK will not get their payouts, and many of them will go out of business as a result. I mean, I was absolutely disgusted by it, and I've spoken to my MP, who has taken it up actually, and my case has gone to the Treasury. So I'm hoping something might come from that.
In the meantime, Simon, what are you having to do in terms of your staff and your operations?
Well, with regards to the money, because obviously probably be okay if the insurance had paid out, but the Chancellor's expecting us business owners to borrow our way out of trouble. But I don't see why I should get into debt to borrow money that I'd already paid money to be insured against this. The business is in trouble. There's no sales coming in. We're expecting a Great Depression, apparently, when this is all over, and then probably Brexit. And the bank wants me to put a personal guarantee on it. I mean, they must be joking. What's so annoying is this is so obvious to the business community. I just don't know why it wasn't so obvious to the Treasury, and this is why that scheme is not working.
So at the moment, whilst you're waiting for that to come out of your appeal, if you like, what are you doing with your staff at the moment, and what operations are you able to continue?
Okay, so the staff are furloughed, leaving me and my co-director Steve to run the business as best we can. They're all at home now, but I have encouraged them to use the time to try and acquire some new skills, do some online training. There's a lot of stuff they can be learning that will, not only be good for their CVs and their development, but also good for the company going forwards.
Okay, but in the meantime, they've got they're on furlough, which means that you can continue to pay them 80% and get that money back from the government in the short term.
Hopefully before the end of this month.
Okay, so in terms of what you are able to continue doing, what are you and Steve, your co-director, what are you continuing with at the moment?
So we've not really got any work coming in. I mean, we could offer a pretty normal service, but one of the things we have done, we've built a non-for-profit community website to create awareness of businesses in Halesowen that are still trading and looking for custom. A lot of local businesses are still offering a service during the lockdown, and they could do with people's support. It's actually called supporthalesowen.co.uk.
That's great. And what else are you able to continue with? I mean, are there any retainers that you have that you're able to continue servicing, or has everything just come to a complete stop for now?
No, we're still making sure that all the websites that we host are ticking over, and all the security patches are updated and all that kind of thing. We're still doing a bit of design work here and there, but yeah, it's until the hotels come back on, it's going to be pretty dead, I think.
So effectively, just to get this right, Simon, the furlough situation that your staff are in has enabled you to kind of have a bit of a hibernation and keep things ticking over in the short term whilst things hopefully iron out in terms of getting back to some kind of neo-normality.
Yeah, so that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, they're strange days for everyone, aren't they? How do you think it's going to leave you after the pandemic ends? I know that's hard to imagine, but let's say that there is a lockdown for another 3 weeks, as has been suggested, and then things get back or start getting back to a kind of normality, and things start to relax slowly. If that happens, are things going to get back to normal for you straight away, or has this changed things forever, or is it going to take a longer time? What's your sort of future planning like at the moment?
It's quite clearly changed us forever. I can't see it going back to normal. The business going forwards will have to be more mobile. We'll have to be more flexible in what we can do and where we can do it. It will probably mean a smaller company if we get the depression that they're talking about, and this is the last thing that businesses want in the West Midlands is Brexit. It's about setting the company up to be able to cope with things like this in the future.
And what kind of planning are you putting into that? So with that in mind, and I know that the details will take some time to come out in terms of exactly how the economy is, but given that view of how it will generally be in terms of a bit of a slump and a bit of a time for things to return to any kind of normality, you say that you're thinking of a more flexible company, it might be smaller in size. How else are you planning things for the medium and long term?
Well, we're certainly taking the taking the lockdown time that we've got to work out our marketing strategy going forwards. We've also taken the time to redo our website. One of the things that one of the websites that all owners of design companies hate is their own. So we're going to do one of our missions is to create a website of our own that we're actually proud of. We're also doing a lot of work on things like social media and search engine optimization, and so that when this does end, we can actually hopefully bounce back as quickly as possible. That we will be ready and waiting.
No, that sounds good. And Simon, just a couple of quick questions from you. I mean, one I suppose on the challenging side and one on the encouraging side. The challenging question is the government and the insurance sector, they're not completely satisfying your needs at the moment, and I would imagine that might be replicated across various small businesses. So in a few bullet points, what does the government, the insurance sector, what do they need to get sorted to help companies like yours?
Well, I mean, the insurance companies look like they're going to get off scot-free, and they have got pots of money. And if anybody should be forking out, I think the insurance companies should be. Now, whether or not the government can make them do that, I don't know. I assume that all those documents are absolutely legally watertight. The banks thing was obviously useless. The government needs to. If the insurance companies aren't going to pay up, the government need to pay proper money. I mean, the 80% furlough money is good, and that will keep people employed by the company, at least in the short term. But we need we need proper cash. The £10,000 grant from the council, is it's just a drop in the ocean, really. So
have you had that already? Have you?
I actually have had that from Dudley Council, yeah. So they were pretty quick with that.
That was decent of them. How did that one work?
It was pretty automatic. I did apply for it, but all I had to do was prove that we were the ratepayer, and that the bank account I was asking it to be paid into was the limited company that was paying the rates, and they just transferred it.
Sounds pretty decent that at least local government acted quite quickly, albeit with a small amount, but at least it was there straight away. In terms of yourself and speaking to you now, even though you've had an extraordinary time, you sound quite calm, and I want to drive into that with you. I want to ask you what top tips you've got for other businesses out there in terms of keeping that calm composure whilst all this is going on. How would you advise others to act?
Oh, calm! I didn't know I was calm. I was, to be honest.
You sound that way. You sound that way to me.
Do I? Thank you very much indeed. It's more of a case. There's not a lot else you can do, and the weather's very lovely, so that's helped. But we are. In terms of tips for other business owners, I would definitely advise them to take this time to if they haven't done it already, to look at researching into how you do your own search engine optimization. Pretty much every business has got their own website, and it's not that difficult to do your own SEO, and it's something you can do. It's a positive thing you can do that will help you when the lockdown's over, and it doesn't cost any money. So that's my top tip.
That's a nice one. Look, Simon Greenfield, the Managing Director of Colour Cubed, many thanks for joining us, and best wishes to you and the company at this time. I hope things go well for you in the future.
You're very welcome.
Keep safe, Simon.
Thank you very much, and yourself.
Okay, I'm going to talk now to Mark Hart. He's the Professor of Small Business and Entrepreneurship at Aston Business School. Hello to you, Mark.
Good afternoon, Steve.
Mark, from a near £1 million turnover to furloughing all his staff and reducing the business to a tick-over state, listening to Simon's story of Colour Cubed and how it's been hit by the lockdown, it really brings home to us, doesn't it, how damaging it is to some companies.
Oh, absolutely, Steve. I mean, it was. I know Simon well, and it was a very depressing, story of how suddenly he's achieved his goal of $1 million turnover business at the end of 2019, and then all of a sudden, an unexpected event like a pandemic, and suddenly he's rocked back on his heels. And I think this is typical of many small businesses across the country. I've been looking at the dissolution liquidation stats from Companies House, comparing March 2020 to March 2019. And there's been an uplift of 70% in the number of companies been struck off, both voluntary and involuntary, from Companies House. So there's I don't think it's all to do with the pandemic, COVID-19, but it's clear to me that there is early signs here of this being very damaging. And Simon's example is perfect. His business has dried up, and I think that he's finding it very challenging.
He is indeed. I mean, one of the things that Simon was talking about was his fury over his insurance claim. As we heard, he had virus pandemic cover, or he thought he had, but because COVID-19 wasn't named specifically, the insurers aren't paying what sounds like £50,000 worth of insurance. It doesn't sound very fair, does it?
I don't think it's very moral either, never mind about fair. I think that the insurance companies have a lot to answer for here. And I know there's a bit of a campaign beginning to bubble under the surface, as a lot of people are very upset. I mean, if you've got a clause in your insurance which about business interruption, which clearly this is what Simon is talking about, and you've got essentially a pandemic clause in your insurance, and they're not paying out because COVID-19 is not named, I think that's an absolute disgrace. And I think the government needs to bring pressure on the insurance companies to honour the claims that are coming in from our small business community. I mean, the government, to be fair to them, have stepped up and put billions of pounds on the table. And if insurance companies are telling businesses like Crowdcube and Simon to say, sorry, COVID-19 wasn't mentioned, we can't pay 50,000, I think that's just not moral. It's not morally right. I'm really very, very annoyed about that.
Yeah, it is annoying, isn't it? I know that the MP local to Simon is taking that up, so hopefully something will be sorted. I mean, that aside, he is positive about one or two things. I mean, obviously his company is benefiting from furloughs, and he's also successfully received a £10,000 grant from Dudley Council.
Yeah, I mean, I think the local authorities, from what I can see, have stepped up, and grants of £10,000 are lifelines to a lot of businesses as the revenue has dried up, and also furloughing the workers. I mean, we're now, having this interview in the first week of the furlough scheme going live, and I would take my hats off to the HMRC team who've got that portal working. I've seen I watch social media, which is a good early indicator of something going right or wrong. And, it's really clear to me that this is something which is working. The big issue, of course, is will the money land within 6 working days? That's the test of the scheme. It's all very well to register and furlough the required number of workers in your business. But if, in fact, the money doesn't land before payday on the 30th of April, then that's the bigger problem I would see. But yeah, I mean, I think that Simon has been able to, knowing Simon as I do, he will find out exactly what's available for him. He will make sure he's on point applying for it, and well done, Dudley.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to Simon at the end there, and he was saying that in his mind, things are never going to return to real normalcy. Obviously, we're all expecting some change in life, but Simon's quite definite about the fact that in his mind, his business will have to become smaller and more flexible for the future. What are your thoughts on that for the wider business community?
I think this is a common story I'm hearing as well, that yes, there is a lot of challenges out there, and businesses are, angry, annoyed, having difficulty navigating their way through how they keep their business afloat. But I think it's also giving them an opportunity to reflect. And Simon, whilst facing the challenges, is obviously looking at his business. And I like two things about what he said was looking at the way he's going to have to be more flexible working with clients in the future. His revenue just dropped to zero. I mean, and it's forced him to think very carefully about, what that will mean when we get back into trading again. And this notion that it's going to be business as usual back end of this year is just ridiculous. It's not going to happen. But what I did like was the way he was in touch with his workers, that while he's furloughed some of them, that he is encouraging them to think about, upskilling in terms of even basic skills on SEO, and also in terms of wider IT skills. I think that's quite an important message. And, again, we've heard it quite frequently that, keeping in touch with your your workforce at this time, building empathy, understanding their challenges as they work from home if you haven't furloughed them, and the challenges they've got to homeschooling children, for example, or looking after aged parents. I mean, working at home, it creates a whole different set of challenges. But Simon is aware of that. He's got a small business, obviously, and he's making sure he keeps in contact with his workers. And I think that's brilliant.
And that's crucial stuff. Mark Hart, the Professor of Small Business and Entrepreneurship at Aston Business School, many thanks for joining us again on this episode.
Thanks very much, Steve.
Thanks to both Mark and to Simon Greenfield of Colour Cubed for talking to us today. We'll be back in the next few days with more case studies of how businesses are coping and with more crucial analysis and advice from academics and experts here at Aston. Aston means business. SMEs dealing with COVID-19. Thanks for listening.